All right, let's break down one of the most important creative minds of the last, 30 years? We're talking about the guy who literally taught the world to dance offbeat, the one who found genius in the glitch, who built a whole empire on a sound everybody else thought was just broken. This is the story of Timbaland.
Just let that sink in for a second. The goal wasn't to be the most polished or the most perfect. Nope, it was to be the most obsessed with the imperfection, with that little interruption, the stutter. And you know what? That one idea, that's the key. It unlocks everything. We're talking his earliest struggles, his biggest hits with Aaliyah, Missy Elliott, Justin Timberlake, you name it. This is the foundation of a method that didn't just make music, it totally reinvented the rhythm of popular culture itself.
Okay, so here's the game plan for how we're gonna unpack his genius. First up, the cult of the stutter. Then we'll see how it was forged by the warp. After that, we dive into his philosophy of the bounce and his super practical mouth-to-mic system. Then we'll look at how he became an architect of a new sound, and finally, how you can find your reinvention code.
All right, section 1, the cult of the stutter, finding genius in the wrong sound. So let's start right where it all clicked. I want you to picture the music scene in the mid-90s, right? R&B was, it was smooth, it was polished, super predictable. The whole goal was perfection. And then, Timbaland walks in and just drops this beautiful, glorious, intentional mess right in the middle of it all.
I mean, this was basically a declaration of war on the status quo. He called it the warp. You know, that distorted, kind of off-kilter sound, like a record that got left out in the sun too long. Where everyone else heard a mistake, he heard personality. He wasn't trying to make silky smooth music to fit in. No way. He was out there, on purpose, digging through the trash for the sounds nobody wanted, the rhythms that just didn't line up perfectly on a computer screen. He was hunting for the human in a world that was getting more and more robotic.
And that brings us to the bounce. Now, for most of us, bounce is just a feeling, right? An instinct. But for Timbaland, it was a whole system. He built it on what he called human gravity, that natural, kind of imperfect sway we all have. He was convinced that the real power in a beat wasn't digital perfection. It was all about disciplined control over syncopation. You know, the art of putting notes just a little bit off the main beat. That's what creates the tension, the release, that feeling that just makes you have to move. It's literally the difference between a drum machine and a heartbeat.
Okay, section 2, forged by the warp, the making of a sonic outsider. So a philosophy like this, it doesn't just come out of nowhere, right? Especially not from a place of comfort. It was forged in some seriously harsh conditions. To really get why he was so obsessed with imperfection, you gotta understand the fire he walked through.
This timeline, man, it just lays out the crucible that was his early life. Can you imagine? At 14, an accidental shooting leaves him partially paralyzed for 9 months. He's stuck in a hospital bed. His world gets tiny, but his mind just explodes. He has to completely relearn how to DJ with his left hand, his non-dominant hand. That forced him to embrace being awkward, to find a totally new, unconventional rhythm. And then came the Swing Mob, this music collective that was basically a creative boot camp from hell. He was in there with other future legends like Missy Elliott and Genuine, working these insane 20-hour days, a lot of the time for zero credit, just pushing themselves to the absolute limit. Every single one of these things was a trial by fire.
So you see, his unique sound wasn't some cool choice he made. It was born out of absolute necessity. He didn't have fancy, expensive equipment. He couldn't even afford a drum machine. So what did he do? He used the one instrument he owned, free and clear, his voice. He started beatboxing all his ideas straight into a tape recorder. This wasn't a style choice, it was survival. It was the only way he could get those complex, stuttering rhythms out of his head and onto a tape. And that very constraint, it became his signature.
And right there, that was the big aha moment. Through all of that pain, the paralysis, the thankless work at Swing Mob, he figured out something huge. He realized that external stuff, getting credit, having access to a studio, that's all temporary. It can be given and it can be taken away. But his own unique internal rhythm, his creative voice, what he called his sonic sovereignty, that was permanent. Nobody could ever take that from him. He was the source of the sound, and that was all that mattered.
Moving on to section 3, philosophy of the bounce, the mindset of human error. So out of that really hard-won realization, this powerful philosophy starts to take shape. He basically took all the lessons from his struggles and turned them into a set of core beliefs. These beliefs would guide every single creative decision he made from then on. He built an entire mindset around the power of human error.
Okay, this right here is the absolute brain of the Timbaland method.
So in music production, there's this thing called quantizing. It's a button you press that snaps every single note perfectly onto a digital grid. It cleans it all up, makes it perfect. And Timbaland? He thought it was a total trap. He saw it as a way to just suck all the humanity right out of the music. So his idea, the emptied grid, was a choice, a deliberate choice to not use that grid, to let the notes fall where a person would naturally play them, a little early, a little late, because right there, in that so-called human error, that's where he knew the bounce was high.
And look, this wasn't just about making weird sounds for the sake of it. It was a legit, disciplined strategy he called radical curiosity. Think about it. It's the ability to find a sound that feels strange, maybe even a little uncomfortable, and instead of immediately trying to fix it or get rid of it, you just stay with it. You explore it. You turn it over and over. You live inside that warp until you find the hidden logic. It's this whole process of taking something that sounds wrong to everybody else and just focusing on it so hard that it finally shows you its own undeniable power.
And this chart just lays it out perfectly, right? The two paths a creator can take. On one side, you've got the machine producer. They follow the digital grid, they're looking for perfection and safety, something that'll fit right in. But on the other side, you have the Timbaland method. It's all about embracing human error, hunting for that warp, that surprise. The goal isn't to fit in, it's to reinvent the whole format. You're not just making a product, you're creating a vibe, a whole world for people to step into.
All right, let's get practical. Section 4, the mouth-to-mic system, a practical guide to genius. Because look, a philosophy is cool, but it's just an idea, right? The real genius of Timbaland was how he translated that whole mindset into a rigorous, repeatable system, a set of actual habits that baked his philosophy into every single beat.
This is his signature move, his secret weapon, and it came straight out of that early struggle we talked about, the mouth-to-mic protocol. It was a non-negotiable first step for him. Before he even thought about touching a keyboard, he'd beatbox the entire rhythm. Why? Because it forces the idea to come from a physical, human impulse. It makes sure the rhythm has breath, that it has swing. And, this is the crucial part, he records that raw vocal sketch immediately, before any tech can sanitize it. The soul of the entire track is locked in right there in that first take.
And check out this toolkit. These aren't just ideas, they're habits that turned his creativity from some mysterious art into a straight-up high-performance discipline. You've got the Warp Audit, basically a routine check. Does this sound uniquely me, or does it sound like everyone else? Then there's global sampling, his trick for breaking out of the American pop bubble by digging into sounds from India, the Middle East, anywhere. Systematic impulse harvesting was his process for making sure every single kick drum was a threat to boring pop music. And the layering model, this was a total rejection of minimalism. He'd build these huge mountains of frequency that you just couldn't ignore.
Okay, Section 5, architect of a new sound. So let's put it all together. You've got this radical mindset, right? And it's backed up by a super rigorous daily system. So, what happens? What's the result? Well, the result was nothing less than a complete sonic revolution. He didn't just make a few hits, he fundamentally changed the entire sound of popular music for decades.
This chart really shows you the before and after. He went from being a ghostwriter stuck in a basement to being a global brand name for innovation. He took R&B, which everyone knew as smooth and soulful, and made it sound futuristic, otherworldly. And maybe the biggest deal of all, he changed the job of a producer. It went from being a technician in the background to being the visionary architect of the sound, sometimes even more famous than the actual artist.
3 decades. Just think about that. We're talking about an industry where your career can be over in a few months. And his method kept him on top, at the cutting edge of innovation for 30 years. That's not luck. That's a durable, repeatable system for constantly reinventing yourself.
So what's the big takeaway here? His whole legacy proves that being authentic, being yourself, it's not just some nice artistic goal. It is a powerful strategic advantage. That unvarnished bounce, that raw, imperfect human rhythm became one of the most powerful weapons in commercial music. He proved that sometimes the sound that seems the most wrong is exactly what the world was waiting for.
Okay, last section, number 6, your reinvention code, finding your own bounce. Because this is where the story stops being just about Timbaland and starts being about you. His journey from paralysis to power isn't just some cool music industry story. It's a legit instruction manual for any of us who want to break the rules and find our own path.
Just think about that connection for a second. He was literally, physically paralyzed and was forced to find a new way to create. Now, think about us. How many of us feel paralyzed in our own way? Creatively, professionally, paralyzed by what's expected of us, by best practices, by that dreaded phrase, well, that's how we've always done it.
His story is proof that those moments, those constraints, that's often exactly where our biggest breakthroughs are hiding.
So I really want to leave you with this question to chew on. Just look at your own work, your projects, your life. Where are you quantitizing? Smoothing out all the interesting edges just to fit in? What's your warp, that unique, maybe kind of weird idea or perspective that is 100% yours? And what do you think would happen if, instead of hiding it, you committed to it with that same radical curiosity? What if you just stayed in that uncomfortable, strange place until you found its own logic, its own rhythm, its own bounce?
Because at the end of the day, that's the code. The truth isn't out there, following someone else's perfect grid. It's in discovering your own internal rhythm. Reinvention isn't about trying to become someone else. It's about decoding the greatness that's already inside you, hidden in your own unique, unvarnished bounds.